Overcoming overwhelm. Like, is that even possible, folks? This is one of my favorite interviews because not only is Dr. Samantha a great guest, she's offering tools and concepts that are easy and give me hope. Dr. Samantha Brody is a doctor of naturopathic medicine and the author of the book, you guessed it, Overcoming Overwhelm. And this 35 minutes that I spent with her helped me so much. So I know it's going to do the same for you. Be sure to like this video, leave all the comments, and share with your friends. Now, enjoy our talk.
I'm so happy to be here with you. I can't believe it's been this many years of us talking back and forth, and we've never talked.
I know. It's surprising to me, too.
But it's really good.
We have a lot of very close friends in common.
We have a lot of very close friends in common, but today we're not talking about any of them. We're talking about you and your new book,
Yay!
Overcoming Overwhelm. I love the title. I love a good, catchy title. And I love talking about, obviously, I love talking about everyday stress, overwhelm, anxiety, the things that keep us from doing what we want to do and also being who we want to be, right?
100%.
I'm going to get into a free exercise that's for everybody. So just everyone who's watching right now, in the video description, you're going to find a bunch of links to connect with Samantha, to get her book, but also to get this free resource about finding your true north. And I want to talk about this during the video because I think that it's a place that I actually like to start before I do anything. Even with anxiety and stress management, I have to ask myself, where do I want to end up?
100%. Absolutely. And it is actually the foundational step in the book is getting there and having that in front of us so we can actually say, all right, what next? Because ultimately, how do we vet our choices if we don't know where we want to be? There's that Alice in Wonderland quote, right? Like when Alice, I'm going to get this wrong and get it wrong every time, but Alice is walking down the road, down her little path, and the Cheshire Cat is in the tree and says, Alice says, how do I which way do I go? And the cat's like, well, it depends where you want to end up, and then she's all, huh?
But that's so true because so many of us, we're caught up in the everyday, the to-do list, which you talk about in your books, and the things that overwhelm us, the things that sometimes we have to do. And I love that you address this, and I want to get to this too. And then the things that we really don't have to do. And we're caught up in that, in a constant response mode. Right? Like constantly reacting to the things that are put in front of us instead of really creating the type of life that we want. But first, definitions are important. How do you define overwhelm? Right? We all know that we have it.
Right. And so that's the catch for the way that I approach things is a little bit different than other people in this realm. So I think about overwhelm as not just that feeling that we all say, oh, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so busy. This, that kind of sense of obvious, quote unquote, by definition, overwhelm. I think about overwhelm as the manifestation of the accumulation of too many stresses in our lives, whatever kind of stresses those are. And the overwhelm can manifest not just as this feeling of overwhelm or anxiety or even depression or feeling stuck, but as any health issue that you are prone to or whatever your weak spot is, emotionally, physically, spiritually. It's the end result of choices that don't line up with our values and what's most important to us. And so one person can get overwhelmed and they will just have headaches. And so they're trying to treat their headaches, but really what the problem is the stress or the overwhelm.
Okay. So you said values.
Yeah.
And this is a big word. And I love that you put this in your book because we never talk about, or maybe somebody's talking about it, but most people that I'm talking with are not talking about it, how our to-do lists or the things that we busy ourselves with, or even that we commit ourselves to, how they do or do not line up with our values. Can you please speak to that? And I want everyone to take notes right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, I think our biggest struggles come when we don't line up our choices with our values. And that manifests very commonly with our to-do list and our kind of day over day things that we think we should be doing or things we've committed to or things that our culture says we should be doing when really it's not what our own values are, right? It's this pressure from the outside of what and we take that in, our subconscious starts to believe it. And it can come from our, our community, it can come from our family, it can come from our trauma, it can come from so many different things, what we think we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really, the book really looks at lining up, what is most important to us. So then we can vet those choices. And it doesn't mean we're not going to still suffer, have anxiety or have bad days or feel shitty, whatever the thing is, that still happens. But ultimately, if we are looking at what our values are and being crystal clear and not just, oh yeah, I know my family's important to me, but crystal clear about what our values are, we're then able to vet what goes on our to-do list. And then it feels less overwhelming, even when we have a lot of things on our plates, which, for many people we do because we want to, and that's okay too.
I want to give you an example of something that's happening in my life right now and how this has helped me. Doing the Finding Your True North exercise. Again, it's in the video description. Click this link and do it because it will help you. I started looking at different words that I would align with who I want to be, how I want to show up, what I want my life to look like. And one of my biggest words is integrity. And when I feel like I've noticed this by just observing and being very mindful in my life, when I feel out of integrity, I literally cannot serve. I can't show up. I can't make a video. I become paralyzed and I do no work because I feel like I'm not walking my talk. So integrity is a huge one for me. And I have been dealing with a certain amount of overwhelm in my own life, which is, I think that anyone, if they knew, like, just, I have 5 kids, like I can just say that and you're like, oh, okay. But 5 kids with health issues, with the work stuff that I've been dealing with, financial stuff I've been dealing with, and just really feeling like there's all of these things that I have to take on, that they actually are mine, but feeling very overwhelmed by it. And then the manifestation of it being very high levels of anxiety, a certain amount of depression, and maybe not clinical depression, but feeling like having those really dark days and feeling really tired and unable to just do the things that I need to do. And I was also at the same time resistant to getting help for it. Because I'm like, I don't have time. I have to work. I have to do all these things. And then I look at that word integrity and go, how are the choices that I'm making? Even though they're good choices that, I want to be right. I want to be good. I want to help people. How does not going to therapy line up with integrity?
Right.
Totally out of integrity. And I'll tell you so my appointment is tomorrow, my first appointment with a new therapist. I probably haven't been to therapy in 7 years consistently, in 20.
Right.
As soon as I made that appointment, I felt stress relief. I felt the overwhelm start to diminish because I was back in integrity.
Right. This piece where there's inner work to do and we're putting it off because of what seems important is the piece that's out of integrity for you there. Is that what you're saying? That
exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I think that I think it's so hard when we're feeling like that. It's so easy to get distracted by the things that we think are causing it instead of really getting underneath it, right? And looking at, well, what's the piece that isn't in alignment here? And, you can go, well, I don't want to make my kids lunch every morning. He's 12. He should be able to make his own damn lunch, or, whatever that thing is. And then so we put it on that. But really, it's about this piece of self-care or the piece of, not being honest with our spouse or, whatever that piece is that's not where it should be. And then and I also think that integrity is being in alignment with your values too, right? Like that's kind of this bigger picture as well, right? So for you, integrity, that makes that as a double whammy for you. So
that is my value. It's like, that is my values. Like if I had a set of words to describe my values, integrity comes first.
Yes.
So that's a big thing, me and my self-care. And I want to get on self-care. So I'm making a mental note to get to this next, but I want to talk about the big underlying factors that we have to take care of first, which you do address. There has to be some management of my mental health as a foundational element of the way that I move in the world before I can even write a to-do list.
Right.
And when I am not doing that, any to-do list, anything. It could be like make a phone call, go grocery shopping is going to feel like it's too much.
Right. And so for you, that's what I call a non-negotiable. So I think a lot of times we have so many things that we think we need to do or should do that we lose the forest for the trees, right? And that really the non-negotiable thing, so your mental health, but there are so many different ways of getting at that, including saying, one of the things I talk about too is that you can't do everything. It's impossible. Not only the things, let's just say all the things you should do, or not should do, things that you're responsible to do, right? So those things, you can't do all those things. You can't do all the things you want to do. You can't do all the things that, it's just life, there's only a certain number of hours in the day and a certain amount of bandwidth we have. And so giving ourselves grace around, this is something I'm going to choose not to do right now. So let's say you chose not to go to therapy. Clearly that was a non-negotiable for you in that moment, but maybe, this kind of the dragging, oh, I really should do that. I really should do that. I should do that. And then we start shaming ourselves. We start giving ourselves a hard time for not doing it, instead of saying, all right, this is something that I'm going to choose not to do right now. I have other things that I need to get, whatever it is out of the way. So, or it's not it's not within reach at this moment. I'll have patients who, their insurance isn't covering counseling,
Right.
and they don't have the resources to do that. So then we're like, okay, if that's a non-negotiable, then how do we get that need met for you in a different way? And to say, this is something I'm choosing not to do right now. And, choosing not to do that's a piece too. Like there's a, we can't do it, and a choosing not to do it, where those things merge, because if it's, there is a way to do it. It's just not a way that you are going to be able to get to right now. So I'm saying I'm choosing to put this on the back burner because what it would take to get there feels impossible at this time, or is literally impossible at this time, which happens a lot.
What I wanted to get at too is that, mental health for me is a foundational element of like, this is something that needs to be taken care of before anything else can be taken care of. And I wasn't, right. So that was the fail on my part, but there are many things for other people. I know I triggered that one. I know I have it written down too, because I want to talk about the failing in the process. You're like, woo. But for some people, and I love that you talked about it in this book, it might be diet. And they're not associating their diet or their relationship or some other thing that feels like it's all right, like it's being handled, as something that really needs to be looked at when you're looking at overwhelm.
Can I speak to the bucket thing?
Yes.
All right. So I think about, this accumulation of stresses that we talk about, I think we often think about the big thing, right? The divorce, the mental health issue, the move as the things that are, or even our to-do list, the things that are causing us stress. But ultimately, if overwhelm comes from having too many stresses, we have to pull that apart and look at all the areas that stress impacts us. Mm-hmm. I always say to people up front before we start looking at this, it can feel overwhelming when you start identifying all the stresses in all the different areas, because it's a lot, because it's life. However, what we're actually doing is being honest with ourselves and being conscious and being present with, here are all the things, and then we can identify where we have control and where we don't have control, or where we're going to choose to act or choose not to act, taking a responsibility back into our own hands. And so those stresses can be diet. It can be environmental stress, which can be the noise. We were talking about a mutual friend before we hopped on, who had an apartment in New York City on 9th Avenue. And I would stay there whenever I went into New York. I'm like, it is so loud. You can't even,
I've been there.
How do you work? Like, how do you do any of that? And, so that kind of thing then becomes, a stress in a way that then becomes a background that you say, that's building up. Or so the environment, like your sound, it could be the chemicals you're using to clean your house. It can be the decision that's left unmade. It can be the squeaky drawer, the minutia things.
Yeah, that you start to ignore.
Right. And when we
become the background.
Right. However, sometimes that's the low-hanging fruit often. But because it's the low-hanging fruit and we think, oh, I need to do this bigger thing to get rid of my stress, we miss out on the possibility. So again, I think about it as a bucket. We're all born with a certain size bucket ability to handle stress. Mm-hmm. When it fills up and spills over, that's when we manifest overwhelm in whatever way we manifest it. So my job with in general, with my patients and my online clients and with the book and with my speaking and all the people I try to touch is how do we get the load in our bucket down? And it can be something like a non-negotiable. Therapy needs to happen, even though my subconscious is fighting me tooth and nail. Or, I'm going to stop eating purple pickles because they make me break out in a rash and then I'm uncomfortable, whatever your thing is. So looking at those things is the thing that seems obvious, but when we pick out the smaller things and the load decreases, we are then able to have more room for the inevitable stresses that happen in life. And so getting clear about that's a little thing I can do. I can just walk downstairs and get WD-40 and spray it on my door. And then every time I open the door, I'm not going to I have to do that thing. And it seems so small, but those things add up. And that's where the food, the nutrition piece for my patients and clients often comes in. It's something I do in my practice. I work a lot with nutrition, and I know how much having that healthy foundation helps people have more bandwidth to feel better, to do the things they need to do.
That's what it is. It's like, what is in my control? What can I actually, because there's so many stressors in our lives that we can't control. So why not give yourself a little bit of a break and remove the things that you can? And it is that little like there's this spot on my ceiling at the bottom of my steps that there's a water stain there. And every time I go by it, I'm like, oh, and it's that little bit of aggravation that I start to ignore, but it's still affecting me that I'm like, all right, we're going to paint this. We're going to paint this. I know, you know it, and everyone watching knows it. When you take care of that little thing, like that little noise in your car or that thing that you forget to drop off at the mailbox and, you just keep looking at it. But once you do, you feel like you're a warrior. It's like, if you could just do that for yourself every day by acknowledging. And I've done this. I've written down a whole list of things that were stressing me out. And I didn't want to do it because I felt like I sound like a maniac. Like I sound like I'm just complaining because like everything's wrong. But when I looked at it, when I really looked at all the little things in every area of my life and saw like, okay, I can actually take care of this, or I can be okay with this, or I can let this go. Go ahead.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say is you can let it go or you can delegate it. I one time lost my to-do list. Like I legitimately lost my to-do list. It was on paper because I'm old and I use paper.
Me too.
And it gone. And for 2 weeks I was in panic. And then suddenly I was like, I really feel like I don't have this giant, nothing happened. Like it was totally
nothing happened.
Nothing happened. And there were some things that people came back to me later saying, hey, I'm waiting on you for this. I'm like, I lost my to-do list. I'm really sorry. But most of the things really honestly just fell off. And it's important to know that many of the things that we feel we've put this extra importance on, it's not necessary. I do want to touch on one other thing briefly before we move on, though, which is the little things. I think when we're struggling a lot with overwhelm or with mental illness, with anxiety, with depression, whether it's clinical depression or whether it's situational depression or some combination, doesn't matter. Doing those little things can feel, gigantic and impossible. And, it could be, your little thing could be getting out of bed. Your little thing could be, putting on a little bit of lipstick or reaching out to a friend and saying, hey, I know you offered to help me and I'm having a hard time even just reaching out. Can we go for a walk? Or, the things that seem so hard, especially when we're in that place that, give yourself credit and grace for being able to do that. And some days, like the little thing might be deciding to stay in bed and honoring the fact that you feel terrible. Like that's okay too. Wherever we're at is so important to be able to honor where we are. And then that doesn't, what I don't want to do is say, all right, it's healthy or okay to be stuck for extended periods of time. Like that's when we need to reach out and say, hey, I haven't gotten out of bed in a week. I have, empty pizza boxes all over my room. That's the place to say, all right, this is impeding me in a way that I do need additional help, and reaching out is hard, but that can be the little step, whatever it is.
I love that you said that so much. I'm so really, I want to take a beat and thank you for that, because in this world that I'm in of self-help, of spiritual wellness, there's a lot of bypassing of real pain and real difficulty and struggle that goes on. I've even been guilty of it in the past because I thought that what I was feeling was incorrect because I wasn't getting it. So I was just like, well, I just need to like think good thoughts, or I just need to
Right.
just get up and do the thing. At the same time, knowing how hard it feels to just get up and brush my teeth and wash my face.
Right.
But there is so much victory in getting up and brushing my teeth and washing my face. There was a part of your book where you talk about enlisting your team, creating a team, which I thought was really beautiful. And I want to talk about it in combination with creating or finding the self-help that is in alignment with your values, because that's another thing that tripped me up, because I was always like doing the thing that the expert told me, and it wasn't in alignment of what was really going to help me and my values. So, but the team, I love the team. Can we talk about how important that is?
Yeah. And it can be different for everyone. I mean, one of the things that's really common when we're struggling is to isolate, and the isolation just then builds on itself, and it makes it every day, makes it harder to reach out. And, there are many reasons we do that when we're feeling down and overwhelmed. And for everyone, what their team looks like is going to be different. I do think everyone needs a good health practitioner who listens to them, who is willing to hear what their values are, and whether that's about the continuum of, alternative versus traditional medicine, or, I see a big thing that comes up often for my patients and clients is like weight. Their doctor's like, you really need to lose weight. And they're like, I don't want to lose weight. That's not something that's important to me or for my values. So making sure that our team does line up with what our values are. And so a good, a medical practitioner, whether that's a Western medical doctor or a trained licensed naturopath, or your alternative healthcare folks. In my book, I called it the Woo team, and my publisher was like, you can't use that word. It's people find it derogatory. I'm like, all right, whatever. If you roll like that, to make sure you have that kind of support as well. A counselor for many people, if we have access to that, can be immensely helpful. And then our tiers of friends. And, and so family also, I'm going to put that aside, and that can overlap with friends, but also making sure that, there's this sweet spot for each person of how many people they really let in, and how many people they're going to be willing to really share what's going on truly and deeply, right? That having people who you are comfortable doing that with, if you have that, is important, and trying to make an effort to connect with the people who you feel are those people for you. Balanced out with, historically, there was a time where when I have so many close friends, I can't really be fully in relationship with any of them. And I had to say, like, this person really, this doesn't serve me. This relationship isn't serving me right now. And it's not that I'm going to dump that person or, but to say, like, this isn't somewhere that I can continue to put this amount of energy. It's not reciprocal. It's not supportive. This person's not in alignment with my values. So really looking at who those people are that you want to hold you, that you feel can hold you up. Like, right? We can't hold ourselves up all the time. We need to allow other people to help hold us up.
I am the biggest, the biggest advocate and participant in the team. I use my team for everything. And I'll tell you, I have a community at church that I talk to about specific things. I have a support group that I go to every week to talk about other things. I have a couple different text groups that have different friends in them. So like one for business and one for personal and one for relationship. It's like I'm always assembling my teams. And then I even have my online community. I made a commitment to show up for videos on Monday and Wednesday, just show up live. And that for me, which people don't know, but I'm revealing now, that was part of my therapy. Because I know that if I have a commitment to show up for people every Monday and Wednesday, I am going to get up and at least from, the waist up, look pretty decent. Like sometimes I'm doing it in my underwear and sometimes I'm doing it without a shower, but I have the appearance of, looking all right. And that has helped me so much with my mental health, with my self-care, and also just like catapulting me into my day and making sure that I do something in my day and allowing me to check off a box that says, if nothing else got done, I did this. That was nourishing for me.
Right. That brings up something for me too around, everybody's going to be different. And some people really are fine without having that kind of that kind of network and community. Like some people really need their team to be their doctor and their partner. And that really is enough for them. And, it's going to vary if you're an introvert or an extrovert. It's going to vary whether you're in an online space in your job. We were talking about this earlier before we got on too, about having a job where you're face forward to the world all the time, right? Like you are your business in this way that, sometimes I know for me, I can feel like I don't feel like being out there. I feel like hiding. I don't want to get out from under my covers. I'm having a bout of feeling really down or questioning my life. And, there's this responsibility in my job and helping other people to show up face forward. And I think that making sure that we are lining up, when we're looking at what our team is that we need, or looking at what nutrition things that we need, whatever it is, that we're being super clear. And again, there are a ton of exercises in the book about this, but you don't need the book to do that, to be, all right, is this what I need? Right? What is, just because I know sometimes people will look to you and say, oh, this is what she does, I'm going to do that,
Right.
And that's the problem again with this whole self-help thing, right? We think that the person has the answer, but the original title of this book, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's I was speaking to the agent of a friend of mine who he connected me with him when I was first working on the book. And the original title was "The Answer Is There Is No Answer." Right, exactly. And the agent was like, that is the worst name I have ever heard for a book. But what I think I was trying to say was the answer is there's no one answer. Right. The answer is there's no specific answer. Right. Everybody, when I tell them that, they get this look of horror, like, no, you can't. People are buying a solution. Right. But it really is, it's different for everyone. From the macro to the micro, right? Who you need and what your team looks like and what stresses are non-negotiables for you to address and what, it's just so different person over person. And that's what I was really trying to get at here is what I do with my patients and my clients one-on-one to say, okay, how can I take that now and bring it out in a way that people have access to that? What do we need for you as an individual to then have systematize it basically.
Right. And it, it's constantly changing for me too. So sometimes I really need that huge team. And a lot of times it's, matching my self-care with my values, knowing who I am as a person and how I want to show up with how I'm, what I'm creating for myself. Like I have one day a month where my period is just terrible. Well, and actually I'll say this in a different way. It used to be terrible because I was powering through it. I was white knuckling through this day. I was still trying to be productive. I was still trying to show up for things. And now with my teammate, my husband, I say, honey, one day out of 30, I need to not leave the bedroom.
Right.
And I really don't. I eat in bed. I work in bed. I've actually become more productive, which wasn't the goal, but it was a byproduct of it because I'm just honoring the fact that I really shouldn't be doing anything. I don't make appointments. I don't have phone calls.
Right.
And it's just one day. And that one day of taking time relieved many, many, many days of suffering and anxiety.
Right. Game changer. Right.
Such a game changer.
Yeah. I would like to give everyone watching permission to do that, even if they don't have a bad period, just to take one day. I give you permission to take one day a month. It's a brilliant idea, right? Yeah. Just pick it in. It's like, go and do it. Just stay in bed, get the help that you need. I mean, again, not everyone is able to do that.
Right. Of course.
Partner, you've got kids or whatever, but most of us can figure that out. You could do, and you know what, if you don't have, if you don't have access to, to someone who can take care of your kids, find a good friend who will do a trade with you. One day they take everybody and then another day you take everybody. So you can have that space to just do nothing and be in bed if you want to do that, or something else if that's what really brings you peace.
I can't believe how long we're talking, but I do have one more question. This was so bad. I was like, oh my gosh.
Like, wait a minute. Are we just,
Oh my God. But, and I'll tell you just another note. I really love that you even make the corrections because I consider myself to be really good in considering other people's situations and their circumstances and, speaking from the I and like, I'm lucky that I get to do this, or this is something that I can't do. And maybe you can. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm grateful for that, for you even saying like my day in bed isn't for everyone, even like I took myself on a movie date a couple weeks ago where I went to Barnes and Noble for a couple of hours, and then I went and saw a movie by myself, and more healing was done in that afternoon than I had experienced all year, for real. Like, it was really something that I needed to happen. And it was just, I had a coupon. It was a cheap movie. I didn't spend any money in Barnes and Noble. It was 5 hours and it was glorious. It was really, really the most nourishing thing. But before we go, I need to talk about failure.
Okay.
Because I am going to see a therapist tomorrow. And when someone who I work with, who I love, and who has been a coach to me for many years said, I think it's time that you get back to therapy and you work on this, I bawled. Mm-hmm. It felt like, and me, who speaks all the time, you know, take your medication, see your doctor, do like whatever it takes to make you better. I felt this deep ache and sense of failure for having to go back to therapy. I mean, I'm over it now.
Yeah, fair.
It, but fair. It was rough.
Yeah.
I want to talk about failure in the process and what that means.
You know, the first thing I want to say is life, you know, we are there. I personally believe that you cannot fail at self-care, that you cannot fail at growth, that you cannot fail at life. This is a process. We're all in a process of figuring out what works best for us. And it changes season over season. And there's no end to therapy, right? What you do is you go through, and it's not, I will say, I mean, just again, we're talking about you for a minute. You know, what you've been doing over the last, 4 years or 20 since you've been in regular therapy, you've been doing the work. It's not like you haven't done the work. You've been doing the work to get to a point where you were ready to do the next round of therapy, because it's part of a process, right? Yeah. And it's peeling an onion. And when we're on a path of growing and becoming better humans, whether that's in our, acceptance of other people, or our languaging, or our self-care, or our how we're interacting with the world, or our belief systems, right? It's an evolution, and there is no end to that. It's a process. So that you really can't fail. What we can do is learn from something. So if we say, like, here's something, people often will say, I know I need to stop eating this thing because it's a non-negotiable for me and it makes me feel terrible, yet they keep being drawn to it. And that can sometimes be, subconscious issues about worthiness, or it can be issues around addiction, or it can be issues around not feeling like, whatever there are a million different reasons. But when there are things that we want to do for ourselves and we're continually not doing them, then we need to look at, okay, why? What's underneath this? It's not a failure. It's a lesson. It's a way to learn what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And what works for someone may not work for someone else. And what works in one season may not work in another season. Because it's just, life is this crazy, messy evolution for all of us. And that's why the self-help industry is so challenging for me, because so often it's like, here's the thing you should do. Like, you should, even meditation, right? Like, how many people say, well, I suck at meditation. I'm like, no, you cannot suck at meditation. Like, it's not possible. It's not a thing. No. But we feel like, and there's this shame culture that we live in too, right? Especially as women, for everyone, many people, but especially as women, we're taught that we need to succeed at all the things or we're a failure. But when we look at it in this, dichotomous, you can succeed and you can fail. Like, it's just that's not a thing. And if we can, again, I'm going to say, give ourselves grace and give ourselves space to say, what isn't working here? And how do I need to shift gears? How do I need to recalibrate to get to where I need to get? Because you can't fail at self-care. You just can't. It's impossible.
So we are recording this. It's March 12th, correct? So we're recording this on March 12th. It's coming out in a couple weeks. But I just wrote on my Instagram this morning, talking about going to therapy this morning and talking about all the different ways that depression can show up and what it looks like and how it has looked to the people who have been watching me for the past several years. Even in the context of me sharing quite often, my struggles and how I'm managing things, but I don't think that they really understood the darkness of some of the times that I've gone through over the past several years. And that depression looked like me showing up and smiling and nailing, book deals and having a loving relationship and having support. And I was still in this place of confusion, still in this place of sadness, still having these down days. And at the end of the post, I emphasize the and, which is something that I really embrace.
Yes.
I am someone on March 12th, I'm 12 days sugar sober. because that was a big issue in my life that I wasn't acknowledging.
Wow.
I'm 3 or 4 days not yelling sober. So I'm calling it rage sober because I'm someone who's very quick tempered, and yelling was something that was hurting me. It was something that I was repeating and I didn't like. And I'm going to therapy tomorrow. And though I am a capable, qualified, talented healer, teacher, coach who is showing up for people every single day. Yes. And I want everyone watching here to listen to what you said, to pick up Overcoming Overwhelm, which I'm very excited about, and to understand that you can be in process and fabulous at the same time. And all of us are, really. We're all wonderful and in process. So do you want to tell us one more time where to find you? Even though I have the links in the video description, but where would you love for us to go and love for us to see from you?
Great, thanks. My favorite place to be on the socials right now is Instagram, and my handle is at Dr. Samantha ND. So A for DR Samantha, N is in naturopathic, D is in doctor. Mm-hmm. And that's actually where you can find me all over social and Facebook and Twitter and all the places. And my website is drsamantha.com, and I have lots of resources additionally over there as well.
I had so much fun talking to you.
Me too.
This is really good. Thank you so much. Everybody who's watching, please stick around for more videos with amazing people. I always bring you the best people, but I really hope I'm gonna bring you back. We're gonna talk again, especially when my book comes out, because I think maybe there should have been some things in my book that I didn't include. So you're going to be the supplement.
There always are.